You guys hear me? I don't know how to get the chat working. It says chat is disabled. Sorry, I'm a boomer. I'm new at this. All right, cool. Thanks, John. I wish I knew how to turn the chat on. I'll get started in just a minute. I guess I should put up this notepad thing. All right. Hi. This is Matt from Source City TCG. We just got some announcements this morning. I have the link in the stream description, but we have 5 cards for Commander EDH that were unbanned today. First one is Gifts Ungiven. Let me open up Scryfall so I can get these. Maybe I should just put it side by side. Okay. So the first one's Gifts Ungiven. I guess I'll just go through these one by one. Gifts is, this is an old school powerhouse card, originally from Champions of Kamigawa, I think. So the very first Kamigawa set. Really cool and interesting cards. 4 mana for an instant, 3 and a blue. You search for your library for up to 4 different cards. So they all have to have different names. Obviously, that's a given in EDH, but you couldn't find 4 of the same basic, for example. So you get 4 different cards, you search for them, and then you choose an opponent to pick 2 of those that you don't get. So the opponent gets to decide which 2 you get, which 2 you don't get, and you go from there. So you search up, normal situation is you search for 4 different cards. You give them to an opponent. They say, okay, I don't want you to have this one. I don't want you to have this one. The thing that makes this card so powerful is that the 2 that they choose go to the graveyards. They have to choose 2, and the 2 they chose go to the graveyard, which is not necessarily out of the game, as I imagine most of you know. You can search for cards like Life from the Loam to really just like be able to dredge it back to your hand. You can search for something like Dread Return to be able to flash it back from your graveyard. And the interesting thing that you might not realize with this card is that If you search for only 2 cards, it does say search for up to 4. If you search for only 2, then you basically just get a double entomb. It puts the opponent must choose both of them. They have to choose 2 of the ones that you chose, and if you only chose 2, then those are their only options, and then those cards all go to your graveyard. So a lot of times this is played in that fashion where you don't want, sometimes if you just want the Attuned effect, if you search for 3 or 4 cards, then the opponent has the option to put the cards that you don't want in your hand into your hand. So that's why occasionally you'll see this played that way, where you just search for 2 cards. Opponent doesn't get a choice. They must send both cards to your graveyard. And then you got like a double entomb for 3 and a blue. So pretty cool card. You can play it fairly and just search for 4 really good cards, and whichever 2 you get, great. But a lot of times what you'll see is people searching for like an Eternal Witness, a Reanimate spell, and then 2 big targets or something like that. There are tons of different combinations. You can think through this and decide, like, what would I do? And the best way to consider it is, what don't you want opponents to do? Like, what's the worst case scenario? And are you still okay with that? And that's how you break this card. So, very good card. I think it's a fun unban. Personally, I think this card, and history might prove me wrong here, but I think this card is a little bit past its prime, just a tad. I think it's going to turn out to be not quite as powerful as it once was. There's just so many powerful effects in the format now. In CEDH, I could see this being powerful because then you just search for piles that include something like Underworld Breach and Yawgmoth's Will, and then whatever you're given doesn't really matter. For example, if your pile was Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, Underworld Breach, and Yawgmoth's Will, then as the opponent, what do you give them? Obviously, you can't give them Thoracle and Consult because they just win right away. So you give them maybe Thoracle and Yawgmoth's Will, right? Because then it is the most difficult to pull it off, but really all you have to do then is cast the Yawg Will. That allows you to cast the Consult, and then you win with the Thoracle. So I do see this being powerful in CDH, but it is a little slow. It is 4 mana to do that, and then you're still going to have to spend another 3 mana extra on the Yawg Will to pull off the Thoracle combo. So I'm not even sure, I don't play CEDH, so I'm not sure how well that's going to really work out. But I wouldn't be surprised if this card turns out to be moderately played and nothing insanely powerful. I think this is a reasonable unban, and if it turns out that I'm wrong and the card goes crazy and people are abusing it, they could always just ban it again. I like them testing the waters with more unbans. I think we really want to have strong reason to have stuff banned, in my opinion. There has to be a really potent reason, because there's stuff like Armageddon that's not banned right now, but do you ever see it? People, it's socially banned, so to speak, right? So I think there should be precious few cards on the ban list, and I think they're slowly working their way toward that. So I like this unban. I think it's the riskiest one that they did of these 5, and I think it's pretty cool. Let's go to the next one, Sway of the Stars. All right, so this is a 10 mana sorcery, 8 and 2 blue, also from Kamigawa. Interesting. Each player shuffles his or her hand. I think that's probably been errated. Each player shuffles their hand, graveyard, and all permanents they control into the library and draw 7, and then everyone's life total becomes 7. So, kind of an hilarious card. I should activate chat when live. Okay. I couldn't figure out how to do that, kid, but whatever. So this is an 8 mana sorcery, 10 mana sorcery, where everyone's going to shuffle up everything, all of their permanents, their hand, their graveyard, everything, into their library and draw 7. I guess anything you had in exile remains in exile. I don't see any reference to that. And then, so everyone's drawing a new hand and starting over at 7 life. And you're paying 10 mana for that effect. So, like, why was this banned? I think that's the question they asked themselves, and that's why we're here today. But I mean, everyone's life total becoming 7 is a little random, right? Like, everyone. So, how do you abuse this card? I guess is the question I would ask. You put a bunch of burn in your deck, and then you're playing a shitty burn deck with a 10 mana sorcery mixed in that you somehow have to figure out how to cast at some point. Or you put this in an omniscience deck, but then, like, when you cast it, you're losing your omniscience and starting over at 7 life. I'm sure there are ways to abuse this, but I think they are going to be strictly worse than other things you could be doing in similar scenarios. And therefore, I don't see any reason why this card had to have been banned. It just seems like if someone's casting it, like, I think that's just hilarious. Like, what even happens? I'm actually excited to play against this once just to see what goes down. Because, like, to me, it seems like it's kind of just a coin flip. Whoever gets the best 7 is maybe going to win, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to deal 7 damage with a fresh hand and no lands at play. I, I mean, I just can't think of a way that this is ever good. Like, even if you built your entire deck around making this card good, tell me how that's possibly going to be better than doing something else. Or, like, if you just want to be a troll and, like, play a Sway of the Stars deck, there are better ways to troll. Like, you could just play a red chaos deck if you want to just be a troll. This is just kind of weird and crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't see anyone playing this card ever. Like, or people are going to try it and they're going to be like, oh my god, this is a pain to even make work. Or it gets countered and you're like, oh, well, I spent all day trying to resolve that and now it got countered. So, lol. All right, Braids Cabal Minion. I don't love that they unbanned this card, but whatever. I guess we've got it now. So it's just another card that you get to roll your eyes at if you're playing against it. You know, kind of like Turgrid. It's just a stacks, you know, I don't know how many of you know why stacks is where that name is derived from, but there's an old card called Smokestack. And this is the originator of the word stacks. You know, Dex played Mishra's Workshop, which is hilariously a card that just got put on the Game Changers list. Obviously an oversight, or just like a card that few enough people own that they didn't worry about it. But yeah, people played a bunch of these smokestacks in their deck, and they just abuse that, and like it basically allows you to shut someone out of the game completely. Right? Braids is much worse than Smokestack because Smokestack can do it repeatedly and you can keep adding counters to it. It's also an artifact, not a creature, so it's just harder to interact with. And Smokestack has been legal in Commander, as far as I know, forever. And have you ever seen one across the board from you? Because I haven't. Maybe like one time, a couple of years ago or something. The problem with Braids is that you can put it in the command zone. So yes, having a Braids across from you in the command zone is kind of gross. But you also have the ability to just walk away from that game before it even starts, or have a rule 0 conversation and ask them, like, so what are you trying to do with that deck exactly? Are you just trying to make a bunch of clones of Braids? That's not really that easy to do in mono black. Like, oh, you're going to tutor up your Helm of the Host and like get it equipped for 9 mana somehow really quickly? Yeah, I don't know about that. So Braids, I don't see this having any impact on everyone's day-to-day commander life. it's a card like Turgid, where if you see it in the command zone, you can kind of like be like, what are you doing there, buddy? And you can find out and decide whether or not you're interested in playing against it. As a card in the 99, it's just basically always worse than Smokestack, which has been legal forever. So, yeah, I'm not super thrilled with them unbanning this over something else. Like if they chose to only do 5 cards this time, there's tons, to be clear that I'm not going to bother because there's tons of videos on this topic, but there's a lot of cards on the Commander ban list that could very easily be unbanned. Pretty much almost everything, in my opinion. Why they chose for this to be one of the first 5 is a little beyond me. I don't think anyone was super clamoring to see Braids Cabal Minion back in the meta, and I don't expect anyone to really play it either, so whatever. Coalition Victory, an infamous card, but, there are tons of I win the game cards immediately that exist in Commander. People rarely play them, Thoracle notwithstanding. And this one, which demands that you are playing a 5-color deck and is an 8-mana sorcery with Wooburg in the cost, is not going to be a contender, so to speak. You are going to run up against it, especially in the coming weeks, as people want to bust out their sweet Coalition Victory deck. But to be honest, it's just worse than other options. Even if you want to play a janky I win the game card, there are other good ones, right? Like, let's look at Tagger to see what this is called, because I don't know. Alternate win condition. So if we want to just see, like, hey, what other cards exist? Let's see which are the most popular. So Thoracle is going to be number 1 for sure. Why some of these don't copy with the hyphens, because it needs those. Oh, Thoracle's not number 1. Interesting. I mean, this isn't really a win. I guess it could be considered a win condition. It doesn't say, like, I win the game. Yeah, so Thoracle, Labman, of course, the obvious ones, Hellkite Tyrant, all of these are so much better. Approach to the Second Sun, it's 1 color, and it's like way easier to win with this than it is with Coalition Victory. Plus, it does something, like you gain 7 life first time. I used to have a 5-color win the game, and Maze's End is like the classic 5-color I win the game card, right? But I used to have a win the game 5-color deck with, what is that white card? This one, Happily Ever After. So 3 mana, you play it, everyone gains 5 and draws, including you. And then on your upkeep, if you have 5 colors among permanents you control, so all you have to do is control a single 5-color permanent, like it could be your commander, for example. I think I was playing, I can't remember who I was. I think I was playing like one of the Niv Mizzets, the 5-color Niv Mizzets as my commander. So you can look up that deck of mine if you're interested. It was pretty silly. But yeah, even this like convoluted nonsense, I think, is better than Coalition Victory. So you have to have a land of each basic. So let's talk about the conditions of this, right? First of all, it's an 8-mana sorcery, so you have to resolve that. No easy feat. But then, like, what do you actually need? You also need a land of each basic type. That's trivially easy. It doesn't say a land. It doesn't say one of each basic land. That would be much harder, but still doable. It says a land of each basic type. And as you all may know, the Shocklands have 2 types. Like a Steam Vents is an island mountain. So if you have a Steam Vents, you have 2 out of the 5 types. If you have a Steam Vents and the Abzan Triland, then you have all 5 basic land types. So having the land of each basic type by the time you're casting this 8-mana Wooburg spell, quite easy. And then you also need a creature of each color. So this demands that you have a 5-color creature. A single one will do. But compared to something like Happily Ever After, you could have any permanent, not just a creature. So like if you had a Maelstrom Nexus, that would work for this. You know, there are other conditions on this one. There are other conditions on Happily Ever After, but it's easier to cast and it's just like an easier setup to win with, in my opinion, versus something like this where if they remove your creature, so let's say you've got the conditions, you're able to resolve the spell, and then they just Swords to Plowshares your Wooburr creature in response, then all of a sudden your Coalition Victory will resolve and will not do anything because you do not meet the conditions. So the spell goes off, but nothing happens. So if you're worried about this card affecting Commander, I suggest you no longer worry about it. And if you really disagree with me and think it's going to break the meta or something, then go ahead and try it and let me know how that goes for you. I think you're going to be pleasantly unsurprised. Unpleasantly surprised. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Panoptic Mirror. So this one is the biggest question mark in my head. It seems extremely slow. Obviously, like you can come up with a lot of cards. So let's talk about what it does before I start analyzing. Panoptic Mirror, 5 mana artifact. It does nothing right when you play it, right? It's got imprint for X and tap. Imprint means exile a card, instant, in this case it has to be an instant or sorcery from your hand, and you have to pay X, where X is the mana value of the card you're exiling. So let's say you choose Rampant Growth. So you play Panoptic Mirror for 5, you tap 2 mana, it could be 2 of any color, right? X is colorless in the cost here. So you pay 2, tap the mirror, exile or your Rampant Growth, you have to pay 2 because the mana value of the Rampant Growth is 2. And then you have to wait an entire turn. So beginning of your upkeep, unless you have like a Shadow of the Second Sun in play, whenever you get your next upkeep, you can then cast, you create a copy of that card that you exiled and you can cast it without paying its mana cost. So at this point, I've paid 7 mana and used 2 cards, right? The Panoptic Mirror and the Rampant Growth I exiled to then cast the Rampant Growth on my following upkeep. So, you know, if you're keeping track, we've used 2 cards, we've paid 7 mana, and we've resolved a Rampant Growth a turn later. Okay, so why is this good, right? Obviously, I've chosen a bad example here just to illustrate the point, but let's pick a better example, a card that might be broken with this. How about an Expropriate, right? Ooh, Expropriate. We don't want to see that being cast every single upkeep, right? You know, 9 mana, you get an extra turn, you get to steal 3 permanents, basically, from 1 from each player. So if you're casting that every turn, pretty broken, right? Okay, yes, but there are about 1.5 million ways to take infinite turns in Commander, and if that's what you want to be doing, this is not the way to do it. Like, if you're paying 5 mana to cast this card, then imprinting an Expropriate for 9 and tap this, and then waiting an entire turn to cast the Expropriate, is that good? I don't think so. Like, it's way better to just cast Expropriate for 9 mana, right? It's, you know, it's not like if you're able to cast this and imprint the Expropriate, that opponents are just going to sit there and be like, oh, well, I guess we're in trouble on his upkeep. I don't know if anyone has any ways to remove an unprotected artifact. You see what I'm saying? Like, so that being the case, we have to figure out like, well, what's the best use of this card? Like, how do we break it? Right. And I don't really think it's very easy to break. I'm sure there are ways, but they're going to be complicated. Right. And then if you're not breaking it, what is good enough value to put on this that it's like really worth it? Let's say you put a Sky Shroud claim, and now you're getting to fetch 2 forests out every single upkeep. How many more turns are you getting after the turn on which you were able to play this and pay 4 to imprint a Skyshot claim. So, tell me a card that works with this that is really like good enough to make this scary. I don't think there is one. So just think about it. I mean, I could be wrong. Like there could be a way to get a card imprinted on here that is really scary. It's got to be something it's got to be an extra turn. Like, because, if you get an extra turn, cheap extra turn spell on here, then you cast it every upkeep and you've got infinite turns. So that's the scary thing, right? Is that like if you get an extra turn spell on here and you're able to make it to your next upkeep, then boom, you got infinite turns, because now every upkeep you're going to take an extra turn, and on that extra turn you're going to take an extra turn, etc. So unless they're able to flash in a Trouble in Pairs or something to stop you from taking all those extra turns, then you win. Well, presumably, unless you don't have a way to win and then you just lose because you will deck yourself, which would be kind of hilarious. But yeah, this card seems real bad. I can't possibly imagine it will be played anywhere ever. So as far as I'm concerned, this card is still banned because you're never going to see it. Just my opinion. We'll see if I'm wrong. All right, so that's it for the cards that were unbanned. But in my opinion, this isn't the real news of today. This is the headline, right? This is the clickbait, so to speak. But the real news is all the new game changers that they added today. And there are a lot of them. So let's take a look. I haven't actually even read this whole article. And they talk about all this stuff. So I don't know if they said things similar to what I said. I'll find out later. And this is a whole big long article, so I'd suggest you read it. I put it in the link in the description of this stream, so check that out. Say I'm offline. Am I offline? Oh no, there are people watching. Hey people. Sorry, I'm bad at this. Such a boomer. So yeah, I'm going to skip all this stuff because you could read it yourself. I don't want to waste your time, and I haven't even read it yet, but I do want to find where the game changers are, because that is the part I care about, and that's the part that's really going to matter. Okay, where are they? Okay, looks like it's where. No, we're still talking about the unbans. Okay, here we go. Game Changer Edition. So 18 cards got added. So, and a lot of ones people were sort of clamoring about previously. So I think, in my opinion, I think what they've added here and what was already on the Game Changers list are good for the format. I know that's a little bit of an unpopular opinion with some people, but actually, I didn't love the Game Changer system when they originally rolled it out. But being someone who plays regularly on Spell Table and seeing how the game has changed, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, because I don't think this is all perfect. Let me just be clear. And I still think that this list has some shortcomings. And I also think that if people want to be lame and kind of skirt the rules and still make a gross deck that doesn't include any game changers, that is definitely possible. So don't get me wrong. I think the game changers are certainly the game is still abusable in spite of the game changers list. And I will not, I'm going to concede that point right now. So for all the people who come and say all the game changers list isn't good because people can still abuse and blah, blah, blah. They could bring a bracket 2 deck and it's going to be gross and blah, blah, blah. Yes, they can do that. And you can do that. Like, go ahead. If you want to do that, have at it. However, I will tell you that since the game changers have been rolled out, games have felt a lot more balanced compared to the old power level system, which was never itemized. I mean, there is a sweet power level infographic that a Redditor made that I used to pass out to people when they said, well, what does a power level 7 even mean? And I think that was a great system. And I wish they would roll out something a little bit more specific like that for the bracket system, because like their definition of what a bracket 3, 4, and 5 are still feel very unfinished. And I think they are still unfinished, right? This is a beta system. This is them testing the waters and seeing how community sentiment changes. So as critical as I am of some decisions that Wizards makes, I actually am pretty happy with the game changers, both the previous and these new ones here. So enough yammering about that. Let's get into the ones they added and my thoughts on each of these. So let's start off with Teferi's Protection. I assume most everyone knows what this card is, but if not, I'll pull it up for you here on the side. So this is a white instant for 2 and a white that says, until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and then this exiles itself. Thank God for that last sentence, otherwise this would be on the commander ban list. Because then you could just loop it over and over, and it would be almost like taking infinite turns. So thankfully it exiles itself. That safety valve keeps this card in check, even though it's already still quite good, right? This is, the de facto protection spell. It stops nearly everything. There is one weird situation where if you can cause damage to not be prevented, you can win with commander damage. Like if you play a spell that stops damage prevention, and then you have a commander damage win, something like that. I don't know. You can look it up if you care. It's such a corner case. So generally, this card is going to keep you from losing the game that turn, and it's going to protect all your stuff because it's all going to phase out. And phasing, if you're not familiar, just means it stops existing, including anything that is attached or equipped onto your stuff. All of that phases out. I mean, it's gone out of the game. And when it comes back, it was basically there all along, just invisible. So unlike linking a creature or something, your stuff will have, it will not have summoning sickness, as if normally if you blink something, it's re-entered the battlefield, it's a new object. Stuff that phases out and then in, those are not new objects. So that's the important thing to know about phasing. And the part about your life total not being able to change saves you against effects that would otherwise get through protection. Because if you're familiar with the acronym DEBT, D-E-B-T, that itemizes the things that get around protection. So protection stops D, damage, E, enchanting equipment, B, blocking, and T, targeting. So if you had an effect like a Zulapur Cutthroat that when a creature dies, it deals, or all opponents lose 1 life, that is not damaged, it's loss of life, and it's not targeted. So protection wouldn't stop it. But Teferi says, your life total also can't change. So Teferi's protection is phenomenal. It's one of the best cards in the game. So it makes sense for it to be a game changer. This is one of the number 1 cards people were like, WTF, why is this not a game changer? And hey, now it is. So you got your wish. I think this makes sense, but I will say that I've been playing less Teferi's Protection lately, mainly because I want to play less staples, not because it's not good enough. But there are cases in optimized decks where I still choose not to play it, and that is typically only because I'm playing Clever Concealment instead. The fact that this is on but Clever Concealment is not is a little surprising to me. But I think the fact that it's also a fog effect where your life total can't change is the real thing. But in a creature deck, Clever Concealment can be a free to cast Teferi's Protection, and that makes it so powerful to me. So definitely a good time to pick up copies of your Clever Concealment if you don't have one. It's already quite a pricey card, and I only imagine it'll shoot up even more now that it's not a game changer and Teferi's protection is. Also good for the stock of something like, what is it, Flare of Protection? What the heck is it called? Let's just check. Flare of Fortitude. Also, stock of Flare of Fortitude moves up with this change, because as you're attempting to build a bracket 3 deck and you have a restriction of only playing 3 game changers, all of a sudden Teferi's protection is less of a slam dunk, if that makes sense. Humility. This is a card that I wouldn't be surprised if many of you are unfamiliar with, because it's the kind of card that is socially banned, so to speak. Like an Armageddon, if you will. No one plays this card because it's just nasty, right? Plus, not just that, it is a rules migraine, 100%. If you're interested in Magic rules and know a little bit about rules, then you probably know enough to know why this card is a headache. You have to be very familiar with the rules of layers. And even if you are, it becomes a big headache to track, because oftentimes, the question of what a humility does is going to depend on when it came into play versus when everything else came into play. And if you happen to lose track of what came in one thing before another, it can become really messy. So if you're seeing this card for the first time and thinking like, oh, that's a cool card, I want to try it out, just maybe work through some practice examples. Take a game you're playing that has a complicated board state and imagine this card comes in and is in play for a while, and just see if you can understand what will happen in the following turns. And you might be like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is not really worth the trouble. And I think if you play this, you better damn well have a plan to win the game after that, because if you're just playing this to gum up the board and mess people up, they're not going to be too happy with you. So definitely a word of caution before playing Humility. It's a very, very powerful card, but it's got tons of complicated rules associated with it, and it's going to piss off your opponents big time. Narset. I'm thrilled that this is on the Game Changers list, because fuck this card. Narset Partner of Veils is 2 and 2 blue for 5 loyalty planeswalker. It's got that first line of text there that everyone loves. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Okay, that's fine. I still get to draw my card for turn, right? Uh-huh. Okay, follow this up with a Windfall. Discard your hand. Everyone, I have 7. Everyone draw 7. Oh, wait, except you guys can't draw 7. You're going to draw 0. Yeah, if you haven't seen Narset, that's pretty much always the play pattern with her. No one's playing her for that recursive -2 ability. In fact, just, if you're new to Magic, or if you haven't seen this card, let me really hammer home what this card is played for. Most of the time, it's the right decision to never -2 her. The -2 is almost irrelevant. You want her to have as much loyalty as possible, because you're playing her as a prison effect. You're gonna play her. You're gonna drop a wheel of some kind, and opponents are gonna lose their hands and never draw any more cards except for maybe 1 a turn. And you just want her to be protected in case they draw a lightning bolt and they would knock her out. So nasty card. I'm glad it's on the Game Changers. The less I see of this card, the better, in my opinion. All right, Intuition is a ultra powerful tutor. It's 2 and a blue for an instant. So pretty similar to Gifts Ungiven in some ways, but pretty different in others. So what does it do? You get to search for 3 cards, any cards you want, right? Could be the same, doesn't really matter in Commander, but It could matter if you wanted to find 3 slimes against humanity or heir apparent or something, you could do that. And then opponent would have a choice of which one you got. The others go to your graveyard. So, feels and sounds a lot like Gifts Ungiven, because it is. Just a very powerful effect. Usually what you're doing is finding 3 redundant effects where you're like, I don't really care which one I get, I'm going to win because of it. And very, very expensive card because it is from Tempest. I don't know, that's always showing me these weird versions, like from Magic Online, I guess. Ah, it was Tempest. Yeah, so Tempest is the only version. It's, oh my god. Oh, I guess there's a Judge foil. That's $700. But the original is $150 because this is a reserve list card. If you're unfamiliar with the reserve list, it's, back in the day when Wizards did the first reprint set in Chronicles, people kind of flipped out because they're like, whoa, I thought my Power 9 was going to have eternal value. And now you've done a reprint set and I'm shaken. I'm a frightened investor at this point. So Wizards was like, oh yeah, okay, we promise we will never reprint these cards. And there's a big long list of them. And this is one of them. So they said, we're never going to reprint it. The Judge gift cards are an exception. There are a couple of very minor exceptions, but in general, they've adhered to this. There was the 30th anniversary debacle, but those are not technically tournament legal. So this is a very expensive card, but only because it's reserve list. It is very good, but I don't expect this to have a big impact on anything. You're never playing this in a bracket 3 deck anyway, where you have 3 game changers. So yeah, this change is pretty much irrelevant as far as I'm concerned for bracket 3. All right, Consecrated Sphinx. I guess I should just hover here. I didn't realize that I could just do that. All right, so Consecrated Sphinx is a 6 mana, 4/6 Sphinx in blue, 4 and 2 blue for 4/6 flying that says whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2. Of course, it's got that may in there to prevent it from being truly balanced, because when you've had your fill of card draw, typically when you've got 80 cards in hand and 10 left in your deck, then you can just be like, oh, I don't think I'll draw anymore. So there's not even a risk to deck yourself. This is just a busted card. It's the kind of card where if opponents don't answer it in, I'd say 2 turns, and I'm not talking about your turns, I'm talking about 2 total turns. You play it, next opponent has a chance to deal with it, second opponent has a chance to deal with it. If it's not dealt with by the second opponent's turn, then all of a sudden you've drawn at least 6 cards. It's pretty brutal. And in something like Hashaton Scarab's Fist, this is just such an unfair thing to drop. Definitely a card that should have been on the game changers previously. This is an easy add. 100% should have been on already. Very, very powerful card. Speaking of very powerful cards, Necropotence. Black, black, black for an enchantment. You skip your draw step. Whenever you discard, it gets exiled instead. And then, whenever you want, pay 1 life, exile a card, you draw it at the beginning of the end step, your next end step. So usually the play pattern with Necropotence is you drop it, you draw, it depends, if you're playing this in bracket 3, and you just dropped it on turn 3, and it was just a normal feeling bracket 3 game, I might draw 15. The problem is you still have to discard to hand size because you draw them in end step, so you don't get to use them until the following turn, and you do have to discard. But basically what you're doing is you're sculpting your hand. You're discarding stuff that you care about having in the graveyard, probably. Well, actually, sorry, it doesn't even go to the graveyard, right? You exile the stuff, so it's even fairer in that way, because you can't just draw 20, drop in a bunch of big creatures into your graveyard, and then reanimate them in the following turn. So really, you're just getting to sculpt a really good hand. So this card scales with the power level of your deck, of course. But just playing it in bracket 3 and drawing 7 cards is not bad either. Especially given that you get to sculpt a really good hand and just play from there. So certainly a card that should have been a game changer before. Not much more to say here. So Bowmasters, like, this is a great card. So obviously, 1 in a black for a 1/1 flash. When it ETBs, you get to shoot something, any target for 1 damage, and make a Mass Orcs 1. And then anytime an opponent draws a card except their normal card for the turn, you get to do that again. So again, this is a card that scales with the power level of games. If you put this in a bracket 3 deck, it's not often even really that good. Like, I've done it, and there are tons of games where it just sits in my hand, or I might like drop it to shoot an elf or something, and then it never triggers. Or maybe it triggers like a couple times. It depends on the game, but a lot of effects will effectively draw you cards but aren't technically drawing. So they sort of get around this. I think it makes sense to put this on a game changer, sort of. I don't know if I would have done it. Because like I said, really this starts to matter in bracket 4 plus, at which point you could play any number of game changers anyway. So like calling this a game changer for bracket 3, I don't really like it because in bracket 3, it's only okay. It's not bad. Like, putting in your bracket 3 deck is usually going to yield good results, but I expect if you're deciding between just 3 game changers to add, especially now that there are a lot more, this is going to be very low on the list of ones you'll consider. In fact, I can't imagine ever playing this. If I just wanted to strictly make the strongest bracket 3 deck I could, I think this almost never is going to make the cut, if that makes sense. So I see this being relegated to bracket 4 or higher only from now on, which is a little sad. What this also means to me from a finance perspective is that the value of this card goes down in Commander because, again, like me as a player, I play 95% bracket 3 games. I don't see myself using this as one of my game changers very often. And that's a little sad because I have assigned one and it's really pretty. So maybe I will play it anyway. All right, Notion Thief. I don't know. I don't have much to say on this card. It's really annoying sometimes. I don't think it's that good, but man, it gets you bad sometimes. So I don't feel like they need to release everything so much like they're doing with this card. I don't. This is one. This is maybe the like biggest disagreement I have on this list is the addition of Notion Thief. I don't like playing this card, but I don't mind when people play it because it's 4 mana. It's a 3/1. It's very vulnerable. I think this is a fair card, and I don't see it as a game changer. So, whatever it is. I'm not on the advisory board, so my opinion is all but irrelevant. Deflecting Swat, this should have been on the list before. It's basically a free counter spell. Doesn't always work as a counter. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's better. Deflecting Swat an aura over to your creature. Deflecting Swat a shadow of the second sun to yourself. Please don't do that to me. Gamble's a tutor, right? It's a tutor that works most of the time. I think it deserves to be on this list. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I agree. I think this is a tutor. It puts a card into your hand. Any card. It's like a demonic tutor for 1 less mana that has a small failure chance. You do have to basically discard another card. So if you assume that you're going to discard something else, which you will, then you'll understand what this card does. I think it's very good, and I think it deserves to be a game changer. Worldly Tutor, yeah, I mean, if it were me, I wouldn't put Worldly, I don't know, these tutors to the top of the deck are occasionally more powerful than putting directly into your hand, because if you're tutoring a Metamorphosis Fanatic, for example, to the top of your deck, that's kind of where you want it, right? Because it's got Miracle, right? So you Worldly Tutor this buddy to your top, then that's pretty sweet. Because then, oh, next turn, miracle, I drew the Metamorphosis Fanatic. What do you know? So I think it makes sense for Worldly Tutor to be on here. Like, if they're just going to put all the tutors, then that's fine. I mean, I think it's a little weird that they're giving restrictions on number of tutors, like as part of the bracket rules. You know, they're not very the restrictions on number of tutors aren't very clear or very specific. So I get it. It makes sense to put these as game changers to really hammer home that, like, careful, these change the power of your deck. But I think it doesn't really make sense to have any rulings about specific number of tutors in your deck when there are basically every tutor is on the game changer list. Does that make sense? So anyway, Worldly Tutor is probably the worst of the 5 tutors, the 5 single white or single pip tutors, those being Enlightened Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Gamble, and Worldly Tutor. I think Worldly Tutor is the worst, but it's pretty close. Worldly Tutor is really good still. Gamble may be the worst, but they're all good, so makes sense. Crop rotation. I'm surprised they added this, but I think it was the right call. This card is busted. If you don't think so, you're probably not quite that good at Magic yet. That's okay. Like, Magic's hard. It takes a long time, but this card is broken. It's a tutor. You know, make no mistake, this card is a tutor, and it is a good one. This card says, hey, you know the best land in your deck? You have that at all times, at instant speed, for 1 mana. It's very good. You know, instant speed Bojuka Bog, pretty good. Instant speed Talon Gates of Madara, instant speed Gaia's Cradle, you know, whatever the best land in your deck is, this is it. And it just makes decks so consistent, so powerful. You can you always get your Nykthos, whatever your best land is, you've got it for just 1 mana. And you get a bonus landfall out of it. So, really good card. I think it deserves to be on the list. I'm impressed that they added this. I wouldn't have expected it. Dude, fuck this card. I wish they banned it. You know, Seedborn Muse, incredible card. It's obviously extremely good. If you don't think so, lol. I would ban it if it were me. But, you know, again, I'm not on the advisory board. Which is probably for the best, because I'm a little bit opinionated, but I hate this card. I love playing it, but I can't play it because it's too good. You know, trust me, if I play this card, you're not going to have a good time. I mean, yeah, I got nothing else to say. Seedborn OP. It's good. All right, Natural Order. This is a tutor directly to the battlefield. This says 4 mana, cast a Crater Hoof Behemoth. GG. Fun stuff. Yeah, this deserves to be here. You don't want to see this cast across from you. Food Chain, this is like part of a billion infinites. I've never seen this card played in bracket 3 ever, so it seems a little silly to have on this list, but I guess it's better to be on than not, just in case someone who had no idea thought like, oh, I could put this in my deck and be fair. Like, I found this really neat infinite with Squee and Food Chain where I make infinite mana. Isn't that cool, guys? I think you're playing CEDH, bro. Wait, what? I figured that out myself. I believe you, but yikes. Oh, I'm so pleased to see this card here. Did not expect it, but man, this is a nasty card, and I'm just tickled pink that this is on here. This card can go to hell. Now, on the other hand, this is maybe the saddest day of my life. Field of the Dead, game changer. Oh, you know what this means. It's that I only get 2 game changers in my bracket 3s now because I'm not cutting Field of the Dead. So sad. I think it deserves to be here, as sad as I am to say that. But man, I'm bummed. One of my favorite cards of all time. Quite sad that it's here, but I think it makes sense. And lastly, Mishra's Workshop. Oh, you mean everyone can't play the $3,500 Mishra's Workshop Antiquities version that they have? I've actually had this run out against me a couple times in the past month, which is confusing. I'm like, you think that's a bracket 3 card? I don't know about that. So yeah, this won't affect your day-to-day life. It's a card that selects itself out by nature of being like $3,000 and no one having one. I think if this came in every precon, then everyone would play it, but it doesn't. It's reserve list, and yeah, I mean, sure, put it on the game changers list. I don't care. I don't know. I don't own one, unfortunately. I would love to, but I don't. So that's it. Those are the new additions. I think I'm quite happy with pretty much all of these, with the exception of like Notion Thief. I don't think makes a ton of sense to be on this list. And Field of the Dead, I don't know. I guess it makes sense. Like, it does change the game if you like purely look at it as from the semantics perspective. Like, well, what's the definition of a game changer, right? My entire Glarb deck is built around Field of the Dead, so like, of course it's a game changer, right? But that's just in that deck. I guess the thing is, like, it's becoming easier and easier and easier to work around its restriction of having 7 unique lands, right? Because there's so many good lands right now. I'm playing 41 land in my Glarb deck, and I'm not even playing Command Tower because I don't have enough land spots to be running all of the other lands I want to be running. So I actually cut Command Tower, and that should give you a hint as to how easy it is, and increasingly so, becoming easier every new set, to play all unique lands in Commander. I had a mono black Geese of the Hellraiser deck where I ran Field of the Dead, and I still had like 5 to 10 lands that I wanted to play, unique lands that I wasn't playing. So just to give you an idea of how easy it is to get a unique mana base, even in a monocolored deck. So I guess this makes sense, but I am a little bummed. Yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. This was my first live stream, go over these changes. I wanted to have the chat on, but I couldn't quite figure out how to do that because I'm streaming through OBS, like connected to YouTube. So I just didn't see the settings. I might need to just tinker with that a little bit. But please leave me comments I'll post these as videos too, if that's necessary. Again, I'm not really sure how this all works, but I'll look into it. Let me know if you enjoyed this. I kind of just did this spur of the moment because I had time between meetings. So apologies that it was a little bit like messy in terms of the beginning and all of the editing and whatever, but deal with it. Peace.